Thank you, Bob, and welcome to the April edition of the McCue Society. It's actually really heartwarming to see so many of you here tonight, even though we're 2 months early, and thank goodness the weather's gotten a little bit better. Keynote speaker, oh my gosh. So let's talk about who have been the keynote speakers over the last several years. Jim Justice, governor of West Virginia, owns the Greenbrier, beat the Russians at their own business. Ralph Sampson, 3-time College Player of the Year, College Hall of Fame, NBA player. Tiki and Rondo Barber, we know their story, NFL and beyond. Mike London, Terry Holland, and Jim Andrews, who's taken care of more professional athletes than many of us will see in a lifetime. Michael Redler. One of these is not like the other. The fact that you've chosen me, even though I'm not like the other, and get a chance to speak to you tonight, evokes great sentiment and pride. Being part of UVA is a big deal to me. It's a really big deal. It's huge. It's huge. The proud ongoing tradition of the McCue Society has been a source of great bond of friendships and tradition. I had the privilege of doing both residency and fellowship here. I like to say I'm Wahoo squared. That sometimes confuses some people. But while we were here, we learned a lot about orthopedics. But probably just as importantly, we learned a lot about taking care of patients. How to get into the mind and understand the psyche of the injured athlete. And beyond all that, we established great bonds, great friendships. I see people that I have not seen in a number of years. Doug Moran and his wife Marcia, who was the chief resident of me, is here today. And I'm forever thankful that my colleagues at UVA have allowed me to continue to be part of the family and have honored me with an academic appointment. And for that, I'm truly grateful. The McCue Society family is an eclectic group. It really is. Look at you. There are athletes, there are coaches, athletic trainers, physical therapists, patients, orthopedic surgeons, primary care sports med docs, professors, and students. The variability of the components of the McCue Society is really truly what makes it the best family. Part of that family, and one of its founders, as you've just heard, is Bob Franco. He's here with his loving wife Suzanne. He's here with James, his son, who I've known since he was 2. And I want to tell you, he's one of my closest friends, even though I don't get to see him every day. And so Bob, as my dear friend and as a founder, I want to thank you for everything you do for UVA and everything you do for the McCue Society. It's awesome. Being part of the UVA family has allowed me to move about with 2 legends, Joe Geek and Frank McCue were 2 of these. They were larger than life, way larger than life. A real book about their lives would assume to be a work of fiction. Not believable, clearly hyperbole. Yet it's not fiction. The legends are true. And there's an old TV show called The Guns of Will Sonnet where they would say, not brag, just fact. Joe Geek taught me how to care for the athlete. He has and continues to empathize and demonstrate empathy. He worked with substance abuse before it became popular. And after many of these McCue banquets, there were always these little gatherings at the farm. Whereas a Connecticut Yankee, I learned a lot of things. One of those is that there's a very strange liquid that comes in a mason jar. It's very tasty. I asked Joe once, Joe, where does this strange liquid that's in a mason jar come from? Year after year, his answer was always the same. I don't rightly know, it just shows up on my doorstep. Joe also taught us a very important saying. You've got to win one for the tripper. Now, that's an arch rival over there with Tech. And I'm pretty sure if they ever made the movie right for that, Ronald Reagan would have had to play the part of the tripper. Like many in this room, Frank McCue was my mentor. He scared the hell out of me as a junior resident. There was one time where as a junior resident, I had to get all the patients ready for what he did was a live surgical presentation. This is long before the days of videotaping and webinars, and it was my job to get them all in order. Well, I looked at the order the patients were going to be in, and I told them some various times they should show up. He changed the order. And he got so mad and screamed so much at me that all of a sudden I realized I had to run to the bathroom and I had to do it really fast. I barely made it. And as I sat there on the throne, I know the imagery is tough, I said to myself, oh my God, my career in sports medicine has ended before it ever started. However, as a chief resident and a fellow, I truly learned the true meaning of being a sports medicine doc. Not how to care just for the diagnosis, but how to care for the athlete. You could have an athlete come in with an ACL tear, and you knew 6 to 12 months before it was going to truly be able to return. Here you have a Division I athlete whose God-given talent and hard work had gotten to the point where he could play Division I sports. For that athlete, there was probably nothing in his life or his or her life that was out of their control. If they worked hard and given their God-given talent, they had all kinds of success. Now all of a sudden, you had something that was not in their control. And Doc and Joe taught me that the stages this athlete would go through are very much like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote about of death and dying. You go through stages. You have an ACL tear. What's the first stage? That's a mistake. That's got to be someone else's MRI. That can't be mine. Then all of a sudden, there's a reality strikes in. Oh my gosh, that is my MRI. That is my knee. This would often quickly be followed by depression. And I can tell you that during my career and down here, but also back in Connecticut, you could see a 320-pound offensive lineman sitting there with tears coming down their eyes, and they don't know why. They don't know why that what follows that denial and ultimately the reality that strikes them is depression, and they don't know why they're depressed. You know, these are young athletes, and they can't think outside the box of why that is, and you need to be able to identify that with them. Ultimately, in most cases come acceptance. Okay, it is my knee, I do have an ACL tear, I need to have it reconstructed. And then hopefully, with sports medicine team, they can rally to the finish line. That sports medicine team is one that truly takes a village. The sports medicine team is the orthopedic surgeon, is the primary care sports medicine doc, it's the certified athletic trainer, it's the physical therapist, and maybe even the sports psychologist. Because if you rally back to the playing field, you rally to the finish line, then you've succeeded. But they need to know that along the way, they've gone through all the stages. That's what it means to take care of the athlete. That's what I learned here at Virginia. You know, you get this great foundation of knowledge, and I will tell guys who are finishing now and guys who are coming on practice soon that the foundation is what counts. What you'll be doing 20 or 25 years from now is not what you're going to be doing now. Your ability, however, to be able to adapt to those changes, those ability to be able to enhance and embrace those new techniques is based on the foundation that you receive here. Doc, no one taught that to me better than you. I was able to stand on the shoulders of giants, but so too do all of you have that opportunity now. The new giants, they're here amongst us. Dida, Miller, Brockmeyer, Chabra, Hurdle, Hart, McKnight, and of course, Saliba. Jim Rohn once said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." So choose those 5 people carefully. My giant was Dr. McCue, as I said. As you've heard and has been alluded to, we would start our days several days a week at 5 in the morning because he would do cases in the operating room before the regular OR opened. You would come walking in with what essentially was the overnight cleaning staff and perhaps a few bleary-eyed patients. There was one morning I was walking in, I was a junior resident, John Berry was the chief resident, and he was particularly disgusted that morning at walking in at 5 in the morning. We walked in, there was a few bleary-eyed patients, we were there, and Dr. McCue was nowhere to be seen. And John Berry, in a fit of disgust, said, "Where the hell is that redneck?" Well, if you'd ever seen Dr. McCue's old office, as you described, the books were piled high, the patient gifts were piled high, and he had this ugly-ass rattlesnake sitting on his desk. All of a sudden, you hear a voice from behind that and said, "Where the hell is that redneck?" He goes, "Right here." You know, Dr. McCue had a lot of people bring him gifts. Sometimes it would be fruit bowls or something. We would be operating in this small clinic area, which was essentially was a cast room where they'd taken the cast saw out. Once in a while, all of a sudden, you see a little fruit fly by. Very sterile. This man wouldn't blink. He would take his little pickup forceps, he would grab the fruit fly laying on the field, dip in some betadine, throw it along the way, and continue along the case. It was all good. You know, it's Dave saying, Dave has to say, it's true. This is not hyperbole. This is what I'm saying. This is actually not a fiction book. There was one morning, we were operating on a patient, and when patients came in, as the residents and the fellow, we provided the anesthesia. It was local anesthesia or it was blocks. And one morning, we were simply just doing a carpal tunnel release, which is a very local block and some local anesthesia. We're doing the case, and all of a sudden, this patient started to what appeared to be almost like a seizure. I mean, he was going all over the place. Dr. McCue looked at that patient with disgust and said, "Hold still." Well, that wasn't going to work because he was still going and we're in the middle of the case. He said, "Hold still" again. At which point he directed the junior resident, "Lay on top of that patient and get him to hold still." So here's the junior resident laying across the patient, holding him still. We finished the case, and for whatever it was, the seizure, or whatever it was, stopped. That was the end of the workup. And he was fine. We had a very well-known and famous soccer coach who came into our clinic one time, whose name will be not mentioned. He may or may not be here tonight. Who had fallen and ruptured some ligaments in his thumb. And actually, I was the fellow on and examined him. And as I examined the ligaments, this very tough, very successful soccer coach just about passed out. The ligaments were...
He does it all the time.
Well, as it goes, I may have mentioned that story to Joe Geek, who said, oh, he used to pass out all the time. We go then to do his thumb surgery, which was done, by the way, right there in the clinic, and the local anesthesia was almost superfluous because he passed out again. When we finally got to the regular operating room, Dr. McCue literally would mop the floor. He'd mop the floor because he didn't want that turnover time to be very long. And he'd be in there mopping the whole floor, and that inspired the whole OR staff to really move along very quickly. Well, there was one day after he mopped the floor and he was getting ready for the next case, the floor may not have gotten dried well enough. And all of a sudden in the operating room, Dr. McCue went down. He slipped on his own wet floor. That operating room went quiet as can be. No one knew what to do. Do you help him up? Did you pretend you didn't see it? It was pretty scary. So finally we looked over, not really certain what to do, and he looks up and goes, "What the shit are you looking at?" Let's get back to work. He's very creative with that word. Ultimately, as a fellow, one of the true privileges is I got the opportunity to be on the sidelines of the football games. That was a big treat. So I'm on the sidelines of the football game, and I believe we may have been playing Clemson early in the season with Joe and with Doc, and one of the UVA players goes down. Doc goes running out, Joe goes running out, I go running out. Well, Doc is examining his knee, and Joe is examining the patient there, and I'm sort of standing there not quite certain what to do. And Doc looks up at me and says, "What the shit are you doing out here?" Again, he used that word well, and you learn the lesson. But the fellow did have other jobs. You drove when he slept, when he went to his various clinics. It was a good thing if you had a rum and coke available after he had finished a lecture. Along with Miss Mabry, you had to have Nabs, Tom's brand, and Dr. Pepper available because that's what he would eat. Matter of fact, that's all he ever ate. And if he never ate, you didn't eat. He could sometimes be very complimentary, sort of. And perhaps as more than once I heard him say, "You're about as useless as bird shit on a pump handle." As a Connecticut Yankee, I had to think about that. But I knew it wasn't good. I remember once again doing a case I was doing the exposure on, and he looked down and said, "Looks like a rat's been chewing on that." There may have been a twinkle in his eye, but if there was, I never saw it. But I gotta tell you, he allowed me to do his fellowship. I was supposed to go to HSS to do my fellowship. Family issues prevented me from doing so, so he made certain that I had a position here, and for that I'll ever be grateful. My bond with him was very tight. He let me know, and I knew that whenever I needed anything, he was always there. And when my son Jonathan passed away, he was one of the first ones that called. I always tell my athletes, recovery from an injury is always a long-term deal. Real life is an endurance sport. Someday I'd like to have that sign written sometime up with my name underneath it. And the same can apply to our lives and our professional careers. We work hard, and we work hard for so many years. Why? Well, you want to make a good living. You want to support your family. You get that personal satisfaction for what you do. You help patients, athletes, others in the community. Hopefully you become financially stable. You work hard ultimately so that you can give back to others. The hours that we spend are filled with great intensity, with great demands on our time, and it can be all-consuming. Garth Brooks in the song Shameless talks about the fact that I work too hard to call this life my own. I thought it'd be good to throw in a country reference down here. Yeah, boy. Your professional career can feel that way as well. Balance is a tricky commodity. When demands for your time and your skill are constantly upon you. Hopefully, with all of these demands, you can develop and maintain a sense of empathy along the way. Rakesh Durand, who was the dean of the Harvard School of Education, stated in one of his speeches one time, there are 5 questions in life that you need to ask along the way. The first question is, wait, what? And basically that means slow down for a minute. Slow down so you can understand, that you get clarification. Inquiry is important before advocacy. The second question is, I wonder if. It allows you to remain curious, to evaluate the situation. What is possible? The third is, couldn't we at least? That allows you to get unstuck, allows you to find a possible solution, a way to get started. Fourth, how can I help? That's all we're here for. To lend a hand, how can we help others, matters as much as that we do help. And 5, what truly matters gets to the heart of life. What really matters is whether you are in a neighborhood around you, an inner city, or a third world country, helping people and those contributions to the human condition will never be wasted. Some refer to this as the positive sum game. Well, what does that mean? No matter where people are, if you help them, they're going to be better off. This helps everybody helps everybody on a broader scale. Why? Because it helps the overall minimum condition in the world. And if people are better off, then they can help others as well. Well, my positive sum game is One World Surgery, and you'll notice that on your chairs today as you walked in is One World Surgery, which is a philanthropic, solely volunteer organization that provides third world surgery right now in Honduras and soon to be in the Dominican Republic. It was founded by an orthopedic surgeon, his wife, Peter and Lulu Daly, who are from Minneapolis. It is completely funded by donations, and it's all volunteer work. Do big cases down there. I've done ACLs down there and rotator cuff repairs and PCLs, and they do hip replacement and trauma revision. Patients there come from all over the country. Some are traveling 8 and 10 hours just to get there to be seen by an American brigade. There was one mother who brought his little boy where she had to walk 2 hours to a bus, taking a bus ride for 6 hours so that she could see if his elbow was okay enough so he could play. The need is great, the satisfaction is even greater, and the gratitude from these patients is over the top. The Holy Family Surgical Center sits on a 2,000-acre ranch in the mountains of Honduras that houses what's called Nuestros Pequeños Hermanos, NPH, which houses a 500-child orphanage. Now, the kids that are in this orphanage aren't up for adoption. They've come from horrible situations of violence or abuse or sleeping on the street, and they grow up there together. And at first you want to feel sorry for them, but they're so well taken care of that they just have a whole different sense of family. They're pretty sure they just have 500 brothers and sisters. And so the ability to be able to interact with that is a sense that is just unbelievable. Working down there is the purest form of practicing medicine. There's no insurance to deal with. There's no peer reviews. No offense to anybody in the audience, there's no lawyers. You're just there to help people. Jonathan Tate, who was a former UVA professor who's now at NYU, talks about the condition of elevation. And interestingly, he references writings of Thomas Jefferson, so it all ties in a little bit. Though more lately he's come out that he's not in favor of all of Jefferson's writings, but that's beyond the talk here. Jefferson describes the effect of describing moral beauty when an act of charity or gratitude presented in our sight or imagination, we are so deeply impressed with empathy that we have this strong desire to do good deeds. Jefferson observed that good deeds elevate our bodies and our mind and create a good feeling, compel us to help others. Elevation for me is one world surgery, is giving back. Getting back to Rakesh Khurana, there was actually a bonus question that he threw in there. Did you get what you wanted out of life, even so? Even so? Well, that recognizes the disappointment and the pain that inevitably makes up a full life. But it also offers the hope that even a life, even so, offers the possibility of joy and contentment. Even so, well, what does that mean? No one's life is perfect. And you know you've been at parties, you've been at cocktail parties where people say, oh, everything is wonderful. The wife is great, the kids are great, the job is great. They're all lying to you. Nobody has that perfect life. Everyone has challenges, disappointments, heartaches. There are failed marriages, there are loss of children, there are partnerships that break up. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what socioeconomic class you're in, it doesn't matter what your people that surround you. It's true for everyone. And anybody who tells you it's not, that's not so. So, did you get what you wanted out of life? Even so. Hopefully the answer is, ultimately, the answer you can give is, I did. For me, being here tonight helps me to say, I did. Thank you very much.
Yay!
From Dr. McCue's retirement party, still has the Dr. Pepper on the back. This is a collector's item. Willing to raffle it off to McCue Society. Thank you.